Testing, test. There we go. Let's keep it going. It's Super Bowl weekend. Here we go. Hey. Thank you. That's just my hype man. Welcome to ESPN's The Undefeated, a conversation on sports, race, and culture. I am Dr. Drew Brown. I'm the curator for this event, visiting scholar of African American Studies, founder and chair of Passing the Ball, Race and Sports, and your host. We would like to thank The Undefeated for producing this event, as well as our host, the Valenti School of Communications, as well as African American Studies here at the University of Houston. African American Studies here is highly committed to student development, community engagement, and dynamic research. At this time, I want to ask you all to silence your phones, but make sure you don't turn them off. We certainly want you tweeting, posting, Instagramming, using the hashtag #UndefiatedConvoUH. Hashtag #UndefiatedConvoUH. Now, I would like to introduce The Undefeated's Editor-in-Chief, Mr. Kevin Merida.
Hey, welcome everybody. We're glad to be here. As Drew says, I'm Kevin Merida. I'm editor-in-chief of the Undefeated. I want to first thank Drew, who started this whole ball rolling of us collaborating at the University of Houston. I want to thank the African American Studies program and also the Jack Valenti School of Communication. And I want to thank a couple of people who were really instrumental in putting this together. ESPN Talent Director Chantre K-Mac, who is fabulous, brought all of our panelists together. And also Sabrina Clark, Executive Assistant by title for The Undefeated, but we call her the real MVP. This is our 5th live event since we were launched 9 months ago, The Undefeated, and more than a digital platform, you know, we want to exist out in the world to convene conversations, bring people together, hopefully to learn more about Black athletes and our culture, and to make to bridge divides and gaps in knowledge about each other. And for all of you who have not seen The Undefeated or been to it, please come to theundefeated.com. And now we'll introduce Kelly Carter, who is our moderator for our first discussion. Kelly is a senior entertainment writer for The Undefeated. I think she's one of the most extraordinary pop culture journalists in the country. We're fortunate to have her on our staff. She has written for the Chicago Tribune, the Detroit Free Press, USA Today, and MTV News, Ebony, and many other publications, and came to us from BuzzFeed. But we are fortunate to have her. Most recently, if you want to check out her work a little bit more, she did one of the most extraordinary oral histories that I've ever read of New Edition, the album that basically brought them back to life. And so without further delay, here is Kelly Carter.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys for having us here today. I am tasked with, fortunately I'm tasked with introducing you guys to 2 men who, quite frankly, don't really need an introduction, but for the sake of formality, the first person on our panel, of course, is Mr. Anthony Anderson, who is an actor, a comedian, a game show host, an executive producer. He does it all, and he currently, of course, stars as Andre Johnson on the ABC sitcom Blackish. And he is a proud Howard University alum. So let's please welcome Mr. Anthony Anderson. That'll work. You're about to see the comedian part real soon. Also on our panel is Mr. Brandon Marshall, who is a wide receiver for the New York Jets. He attended the University of Central Florida, and he also is an advocate who spreads awareness and understanding about BPD, which he announced in 2011 that he was diagnosed with. So please, everyone, welcome Mr. Brandon Marshall. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. Appreciate it. It is kind of bright up here. Want to start here. Are there times?
Test. Is this on? Can you hear me?
Mic on?
All right, before we start, Brandon, what's BDP? BD, Boogie Down Production? What is it?
I knew you were
No,
going to
Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Borderline personality disorder.
Oh, okay.
All right, that's what that is.
No, I wasn't trying to make a joke. I just didn't know what it stood for. Okay.
Yeah, that's cool. No problem.
All right. I don't want you to switch into one of them personalities on me up here. You're like, hey, we was just talking, dog.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Well, to that, are there times when what you care about, whether it be what we just talked about or something else, an issue or cause that kind of collides with who you are as an athlete or a TV star?
I think so. There's a lot of times where, the way I look at it is athletes are institutionalized. We're told to, hey, you're a wide receiver, just catch that ball and stick to that.
Yeah.
And I think now, what Colin Kaepernick has done and with LeBron James, how he's taken a stance on certain things is really paving the way for other young men and young women to say, you know what, I can be myself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we focus enough on purpose. People tell us all the time, like, okay, or we might tell ourselves all the time, this is what I want to be, this is what I want to do, but what is your purpose? And once you align yourself with your purpose, then it's easy to navigate through some of these tough circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anthony, any of that for you?
I really don't think I understood the question. What was it again?
Yeah, are there times when what you care about kind of collide with who you are as a TV star?
No. What I care about is what I talk about on my show and what I talk about in my work in general. Our show is about a family. Just doesn't happen to be a family that's black. It's about a black family and our experiences. And what you see every week on our show are the things that I deal with in my life. I have a 20-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old son now, but when my son was 12 years old, he came home and he told me he didn't feel black enough. And I was like, what do you mean you don't feel? And I didn't say he didn't feel black enough. He said he doesn't feel black. And I was like, what do you mean you don't feel black? I was like, look at me. Look at you. Look at your mother. Look at your sister. Look at your grandmother. I'm from Compton. I was like, look at where they live. Where our family lives in Compton and Watts. I was like, no, son, we're black. This is your black experience. It doesn't make it any less than because you are living a privileged life and living in suburbia. But trust and believe one day, and it's unfortunate, you will be shown how black you really are. And hopefully I've equipped you with the tools to deal with that when that happens. And he was like, okay, Dad, I get it. I understand. And in the same breath, he told me, he said, well, for my 13th birthday, I want to have a bar mitzvah. And I was like, you really aren't black, are you? So, we came to a compromise, and, I threw him a bro mitzvah. And to this day, all of his Jewish friends say it's the best bar mitzvah that they've ever gone to. So the crossroads of what happens in my life and what I'm passionate about are the things that I speak about on my show and in the work that I do. When I go around and I host comedy shows, that's my point of view. That's all I can talk about is all that I know.
Fantastic answer. Brandon, you started kind of going down this line with your initial response, but how do you guys contend with the shut up and act or shut up and play sports crowd? Because I know I see social media that's happening a lot lately. People don't like you when you start saying opinions that differ from their own. So how do you contend with that very loud and vocal group of people?
You got to have thick skin. One of the things I've done, there's sometimes where it gets that I've done. So like when I'm in the season, so that's really when it's really tough because there's so many eyeballs on us. I mean, there's millions of people watching us week in and week out. And for me to stay focused so I can accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish, like I'll get off social media. Whenever I post something, I'll send it to one of my buddies or assistant and say, hey, won't you post this for me? So I haven't really been on Twitter and Instagram for months because I'm just now finishing up the season a month ago because I don't want that distraction. And I don't want anything to kind of tank my thought process because I know exactly who I am and what I'm here for.
What was it that made you want to be very verbal and start speaking out and being an advocate?
Where I come from,
Yeah.
to be honest, it's just in me. It's natural, you know. And it wasn't until I was at that outpatient program. I spent 3 months there. I did a clinical evaluation, neurological evaluation. A little background. I got to the NFL, had a lot of freedom, and you know, you can put a label on it all you want, but it's environmental, right? And I come from an environment that was poor, very volatile. It's not Compton, but it's a Compton, right? And I didn't understand how to deal with certain pressures, and that led me to a McLean hospital where I spent 3 months in an outpatient program. And it was there where I realized, I was like, man, I've been living this way and suffering, not even knowing it. And I got a chance to reflect on my upbringing, and I looked at my grandparents, my parents, my cousins, my siblings. It was like, wow, they're living the same way. And I just wanted to put a face to it and a voice to it and change the stigma, because where we're at today is where the HIV and cancer community was 20, 25 years ago when you talk about mental health. And I just wanted to be a part of that whole movement.
Fantastic.
You know, I want to just piggyback on something on what Brandon was saying. It's because especially in our community,
Yeah.
it's something that we just push under the rug and we never deal with. It's, you know, growing up, everybody always just said they had that crazy uncle. He was just in the basement or in the back room that never came out, you know, and that's how we dealt with it. So I applaud you, you know, for putting the face to it and being the voice of it, because it's something that we need to address. We addressed it lightheartedly on my show Blackish, in terms of my character going to therapy. That's another thing that, you know, that we kind of just say, well, that ain't for us. All we need is Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, no, we need a little bit more than Jesus sometimes. You know, we need professional help. So I just wanted to commend you on that, because, you know, that's brave, you know, that's honorable, you know, to be out there and to go against the grain with something that, especially in our community, that we just look at and be like, nah, that's not what we need to do. That's not what we're supposed to do. So, yeah, I think, you know, I just want to applaud you on that, brother, definitely.
Yeah. Fantastic. You know, Anthony, you just talked about how on your show you referenced therapy before. You've referenced a lot of things that, quite frankly, people are talking about at their dinner tables right now. And your show, in a lot of ways, is kind of set up to help either develop, define, or figure out what our consciousness is. What kind of role do you have in helping to shape kind of the conversations the things we're going to be talking about Thursday nights and Friday mornings at our office, and what responsibility do you feel with some of the information that you guys put out there?
Start with the responsibility. The responsibility is for me and our team to be as authentic as we can be, and that's why I believe our show resonates with the audience the way that it does, because we're not pandering to any one group of minority or people or audience. It's just, you know, we're making television to make television, and we're telling our truth. And in being truthful to yourself and in being authentic to who you are, that will resonate with the people. That's why people from all walks of life can watch my show. And when they see me, they say, when I see your family up there, I see my family up there. And that's the biggest compliment that we can get. Now, the role in which I play, those are my stories that you see up there. You know, my partner in this, Kenya Barris, you know, those are our stories. 4 years ago, we sat down and talked about what was missing from the landscape of television that we wanted to see. You know, shows that we grew up watching, you know, i.e. Cosby, i.e., you know, Good Times, All in the Family, and things like that. And
He didn't think I was going to get him back. I was waiting. Yeah.
Brandon, I would like to talk to you. Which one of your personalities put on these pants with these leggings?
Oh, no.
Where'd I get started?
Okay, I'm just, no. I got the same pair, I ain't gonna lie. They come from the Cam Newton collection. Yeah. But you know, we looked at shows like that and realized those are things that were missing from television for us. You know, families and images that we could look up to, and that's what we set out to do. And we created Blackish, and Blackish is our family. Kenya's wife is Rainbow. That's her name. Mm-hmm. She is a doctor. They have 6 kids. I only have 2. Both of us are first generation successful. He's from Inglewood. I'm from Compton. We are both the only African-American families that live in our neighborhood, respectively. Mm. All of our children are in private school, and we're dealing with the trappings of giving our children everything that we didn't have growing up and giving them a better life than what we had. And that's what the American dream is. And, you know, having our children assimilate in this homogenized world, but yet and still holding on to who they are and knowing where they come from. That's a constant struggle and a constant fight. And I started off by telling you my 12-year-old son came home to me and told me he didn't feel black and wanted to have a bar mitzvah. You know, those are real struggles. Those are real issues that we're having and that we're going through. And he and I sat down, not even knowing one another, and realized that we have more in common than we didn't. And that's how Blackish was born. And so that is my role in it. You know, that's the creative control that I have. For the first 2 seasons, the majority of everything that you saw on television came from my life and Kenya's life. You know, those stories are and those trappings that you see Andre go through at work and with his family, that's real. Yeah. Those are real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that answer, Anthony. I appreciate that. Have you guys, and this is a question for both of you, ever felt the pressure to edit yourselves when you're speaking out about either being black in America or being an advocate for mental health? And if so, how did you kind of combat that, or what made you continue forth with speaking out in spite of maybe feeling that pressure to not do so?
Yes, and here's why. This past year, especially in sports, we had something significant happen. Colin Kaepernick took his stand. He went counterculture to our tradition in football, where it say you're just a football player. Yeah. And this is why someone like myself, so vocal and opinionated, said, you know what, let me just take a step back. Because sometimes when you stand up and you talk, you can slow down the progress that we're making. And what I'm saying is, sometimes we feel like, oh man, this is a civil rights issue, or you know, this is a social problem. Well, if you're not educated on that topic, you need to just slow down and educate yourself on it before you go out there and speak. So what I did is, when it was all hot, I sat back and I went back and listened to Martin Luther King. I went and listened to all his speeches. How did he deal with these problems? How did he talk about them? Because we made progress. The reason why we're here today is because of people like heroes like Martin Luther King, leaders like Martin Luther King. And I noticed that there was other guys standing up and they were saying things like, oh man, you're playing into the stigma. We need guys like Kaepernick on the front line talking and leading us. So that's why, you know, I think that there's been times in my life where I sat back and said, you know what, we got some amazing leaders right now on this topic. I'm gonna let them handle it. Okay. But for the most part, I feel like when you know who you are, and I'm gonna continue to say this, and you'll hear me say this if you see me on TV somewhere, but when you know who you are, then stick to that. And, you know, when you don't know certain things, educate yourself on it before you go out there and try to dive into it, because you can slow down the progress we're making.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I'm an intelligent human being. And I shouldn't say I think, I know I'm an intelligent human being. And I know I'm smart because I know what I don't know. And I don't speak out on things that I don't know. I go back and I educate myself. Because the worst thing that you can be, it's foolish for you to go out and speak on something that you've only read a blurb about, but you don't know the history of it.
Yeah.
Because not only are you foolish, but you become the fool. And fortunately for me, I'm in the arts, and the medium that I'm in, and the choices that we've made with our show is to be progressive, is to push the envelope. We made an episode, the N-word, very controversial. Made an episode about gun violence. We made an episode about disciplining your child, and we talk about things that you wouldn't, a traditional family sitcom aren't necessarily talking about, especially in their first year.
Yeah.
And so that was a choice. We could have, well, it was our second year. We wanted to do these things the first year, but it was low-hanging fruit for us, and we really wanted to establish who we are with an audience. So when we did take a stance and make episodes about police brutality, which was something that I suffered, and when we make episodes like the Lemon episode, which was about the election this past year, those are choices that we make because we have the ability to form thought and make change in music and television and just the medium of the arts. And you said, well, what's your contribution to, so when we sit down Thursday morning around the water cooler, that's exactly what Kenya and I wanted to do.
Yeah.
When we sat down and made our show, our very first conversations are, whenever this show gets on the air and whatever day it comes on, we want people around the water cooler talking about, yo, did you see Blackish last night?
Yeah.
I can't believe they talked about that. I can't believe they said that. And, and we try to be fair and not just give the black perspective. We give a perspective across the board. In particular, the Lemon episode or the election episode. It wasn't. We weren't shitting on Trump. It wasn't about Trump.
Right.
It was about the election, and we gave every perspective: black, white, man, woman, and all of that, and everybody got equal time to voice their opinion and their concern. So it wasn't slanted.
Yeah.
And that's what we do, and we think we're fair in how we address things, and we want to be as honest and authentic as we can when we do it, and that's what it's all about.
No, fantastic. I can't tell you how many times I saw up and down my Facebook timeline, give Anthony Anderson all the Emmys after the Lemon episode because it was so well done and on point. Along those same lines.
I even watched that one.
It was good, right? It was a round of applause for that episode, right? It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Along those lines, and I love that you both, kind of talked about wanting to be well-researched before you speak out about something, but the fact of the matter is that you guys are both very visible people in your respective fields, and people often are asking you to weigh in on things that perhaps you're not necessarily prepared to talk about. But that said, where do you get your news from? Like, how do you inform yourselves when you finally decide this is something that you're comfortable to kind of stand in front of a podium for and speak out against?
The Undefeated.
A perfect answer. Ayo.
I love Dominique Foxworth on The Undefeated.
There we go.
He's all over the place with what he talks about, and I love it.
Love that answer. Okay.
Same here, and just periodicals and books. I mean, and you can't trust one thing, to be truthful and honest or whatnot. So you have to go around and search. You have to search for the truth. The truth is never just there.
Yeah.
You have to search for it.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. And I don't read as much as I like because I read for a living. So sometimes I just want to turn that part of my brain off. But I find it necessary, and I have to. You can't get caught up in watching the news in these stations because they're slanted. I remember I went to Howard University, and I used to have something over my a red filament over the screen of my television, and it just said false media every time I turned on the news and watched it. Because I had a friend on Capitol Hill who worked in news, and his job was to censor the news that we got as Americans. You know, and and it was some pretty sensitive stuff. A lot of stuff really going on overseas, covert missions and things like that. But you know, things that you think we should know about as Americans, we weren't told. You know, so trust and believe that our media and our news is being censored to us, and we're not getting it 100%. So you have to go out and search for that and seek it yourself. Seek the truth.
Very true. I think at some point I'll be able to open up questions for a few in the audience. So if you have some, think about them. But before I do that, what obligation do you guys have to your team or your studio and your fans, and kind of how do you figure out what's the right kind of path to walk down? Like, do you have to constantly think about you representing your team, or is that not necessarily something that's always front of mind? And for you with your network or studio, if you're doing a film?
Okay. No, it's I first and foremost, I represent myself.
Yeah.
You know, that's so I have my team around me that I consult with and I can trust, but I represent who I am. And then from there, I represent my family, and then from there, I represent my community. And, you know, in terms of the network or whatnot, those are my partners.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, they have their job to do. They allow me to do what I do. They are ultimately paying the bills, but, you know, we haven't had to compromise on anything in the 3 years that, you know, we've been on the air so far. Like I say, when we made the N-word episode, we knew it was going to be a fight, and we were prepared to make that fight. But the president of the network said, you go make the show that you want to make. I will fight the censors for this.
Okay.
You know, because we wanted to say that we wanted the N-word to be said at least once on the episode. We said it 13 times, but it was bleeped out. You know, but we wanted the audience to hear it out of my youngest son, because out of the mouths of babes, you know, come the truth. Paul Lee, our president at the time, said, go make your show. I will fight this for you. He ultimately lost that fight. But it's a partnership that we have, and they hired us knowing who we were and what the tone of our show was going to be and how that was going to grow over time. And they are allowing us, and every network doesn't do that. They are allowing us to breathe and allowing us to say the things that we want to say. And we will continue to push the envelope, and it's not like we're grabbing topics from the headline. This isn't Law and Order. It's like, oh, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
If it's not about being topical for us. It's just about being authentic and real. And if it's something that we're going through and we're feeling, we'll address that. But not just because it's something that's going on at the moment. You know, some things are just undeniable that it's like, no, we got to talk about this.
Yeah.
But just in general, we're like, oh, whoa, what's going on out there right now? You know, no. We stay true to ourselves, and like I say, it's all about being authentic.
Okay.
And the people recognize that.
Okay.
I would say, you know, you absolutely are obligated to the people that you live with, you do life with, and you're in partnership with, because we're all interconnected, right? What I do affects you, what you do affects me. But what I found is, and this is probably over 6 years ago, I gave my life to Christ. Before then, I was easily swayed. You know, oh man, I could do this to get a deal, or do that and get a deal. Oh, this is what the team wants me to say. But I found, like, once I figured out who I was, and I believed in who I was, it didn't really matter. It's like, I'm going to do life with people who accept me for who I am and what I believe in and what I stand up for. So I believe in all of that in that book, and that's how I try to hold myself accountable. So when I see myself being swayed, I just go back to that book and say, oh, no, this is who you are. you know. So it's not like, okay, it's always easy, but I know who I am.
I love that. I am looking for Drew, if he's out here in the audience. Does someone have a question? Raise your hand if you, right here in the front.
Being true to myself, as a black man in America, I can only be true to who I am, and to be true to my culture that I grew up believing in and being instilled in me. So it's not one thing that says, oh, because I did that, I'm black. No, this has been 46 years in the making for me. These are things that I hold near and dear to my heart, and it's knowing who I am, who I represent as a man, the culture that I represent, and the family that I represent. You know, that's about as best as I can answer it for you. I can't be like, oh, yeah, I love fried chicken and greens, so that makes me the ultimate black man, you know, and I love playing basketball. And no, it's much deeper than that. And I've never, it's an interesting question because I've never been asked that, and I've never, you know, thought about it like that, because this is my existence. The hell with my black existence. This is my existence. This is who I am. You know, so just being true to who I am, the things that I know and I believe in, which I may not even be able to articulate in this answer, but I know what it is. You know, my son knows what it is by being my seed, you know, by living with me and me showing him by example by the things that I do. You know, so I hope that answered, but I'm really gonna think about this question when I leave here now. I really am. Yeah.
I saw another hand right there, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's just talk about today's times, right? The best way to answer that question is boundaries, right? We're a team. At the end of the day, we're here to win. We play ball. We do this because we love it. And what I do affect you. If you're the quarterback and you throw me a ball and I drop it, you know, there's a chance we both get fired because they're going to say Brandon Marshall doesn't have hands. And they're going to say the quarterback went 20 for 50, you know, and that hurts you, right? So at the end of the day, you got to have boundaries. But I will say that there's some things that you got to say to hell with those boundaries. When there's social injustices, that's when you got to say what's wrong is wrong. And that's when you take a stance like Colin Kaepernick did, and you take a knee. And there's a lot of people that's ticked off about that. But he's making progress for us. I mean, he stood out there, and one man started a movement, and I applaud him for that. So I would say just it's very difficult. It's really difficult because at the end of the day, that's our job, that's our passion, that's what we love. And then on the other hand, certain things come up that may be close to your heart, and you got to take a stance.
Fantastic. Right there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yes. I mean, yes, the way I'm answering it.
What about you, Anthony?
Look, racism is real.
Yeah.
Have you felt that in whatever it is that you do in everyday life? I mean, yeah, we feel the same thing. I'm sure everyone else in here has. I'm pretty sure she's felt some reverse racism. You know, anybody in here who isn't black, you know, it's alive and well, and you know, and it's really thriving right now in this day and age, in this new administration. You see what's going on across this country now, you know, and building a wall and banning a religious group from coming into America, and just how people are supporting that, just how Americans are supporting that, black, white, whatever. You know, it should be about love and acceptance. You know, let's not forget, Jim Crow is only 50, 60 years removed right now. Let's not forget that. You know, let's not forget that, you know, a young man was dragged behind a car in Jasper, Texas, you know, 10, 15 years ago. You know, so it's alive and well, and it's something that we have to deal with. Hopefully, we will overcome that one day. You know, that's what I'm hoping for.
And you know what I would say? I'm going to piggyback off of that. You know, I always try to look at the other side of things. I think this is an amazing time. And the reason why I think it's an amazing time is because we're living in this this generation of access, this generation of technology. And before Twitter and Instagram, like, you didn't know what I was doing or what I was saying, really. But now, all of these things are coming to the forefront, and we have to deal with it, you know? So for someone to stand up and say this is an issue, this is a problem, I mean, we've been saying it for years, and this isn't the only situation. But what happens is when people's voices are being heard, eventually you have to address it. We talk about violence or nonviolence. Well, whatever it is, something's going to come up, and you have to deal with it. And that's where we're at right now in this interesting time, which I think is amazing, is because people are saying, holy crap, I think it's time to sit at the table. So to his point, as far as hopefully we fix it, I think we will see a lot of progress, but it's going to continue to take us to go through some of these pain points to get there.
Wonderful. One question over here, and then we'll flip it back over here. Right there, right now.
Normally need these things. Kelly knows.
I was gonna say she's my boss, so you know.
So from the very beginning, from the first second, right, Blackish comes, it's a sizzle reel on ABC, right? And it says, I'm not black, will somebody tell my hair and my ass that? So from the very first second, which, you know, I went to bed on that. I was like, oh my God, I'm on TV. But from the very first second, you were very clear that you were not going to present a monolithic portrayal of African Americans in America. We are multitudes, right? And it's right in the home that you have built in Blackish. What has been, because this is something that I've always found very disturbing, what has been some of the blowback or the trolling from the African American community about representing an upper middle class family, even higher than upper middle class? Because you mentioned the Cosby Show. I always feel like shows in which black people have money and are comfortable with that idea get this special, almost this special criticism, because we should be dealing with inner city problems that affect poor black people. So I was just wondering how you, what you got from the community and how you responded.
Well, we got criticism on a multitude of levels. One being the title of the show. People to this day still have not watched Blackish in the African American community because of the title. And I will always say to them, especially before we aired, it's like you're taking this out of context with no content. So your argument and your opinion really holds no weight because you have no idea what I'm talking about and what we're dealing with on this show. That was the first thing. The second thing is you mentioned Cosby and you look at Heathcliff Huxtable and Claire Huxtable, one being a successful doctor, one being a successful judge. And the blowback from that was, that's not reality. That was my reality. I grew up in Compton. I also went to Howard University, and my friends, they were the real-life Huxtables. My boy's father was a very successful dentist here in Houston, and his mother was a very successful judge here in Houston. And there were several families like that. And so when our show comes around and they were like, I tell you one thing, the house that we had originally shot in front of, and that was our home on our television show Blackish, was deemed too big for us to have. It was like, really? Wow. Really? Would they really have a house that big? Well, my wife is a successful doctor. I'm a VP at one of the biggest ad companies there is. Yeah. We drive S550s and all kinds of other stuff. Yeah. But we had to change our house. If you look at the opening, and it's still in the opening credits, it's a different house than what they show when they show the exterior of our house, isn't it? But that was some blowback we got from one of the executives up at ABC and Disney. It was like, we think their house is too big. Well, I'm successful. I have a big house. So why couldn't my television, my successful television family have a big house? But it was never our intent to show a monolithic portrayal of African Americans on television. We get enough of seeing the downtrodden and the struggling and the gang-riddled and the drug-infested views of the African American community. Why not show the other side? And because that's the side. I come from both sides. I come from the streets of Compton. I come from the home of the drive-by. I'm an 80s baby. I was there through crack cocaine when my aunt was addicted to it and her baby was born addicted to it, and we had to raise.
You're a 70s baby.
A 70s baby. But I grew up in the 80s.
That's 46 years old.
True. I'm sorry. I'm a 70s baby. I grew up in the 80s. At the height of crack cocaine, at the height of gang violence and all of that. So that is a world that I know. This success is also a world that I know. And this success is the world that I want to portray and the world that I want to show as a complete antithesis to this, the polar opposite of that. So why, I don't understand why the community would get upset for me showing us in this light. Really, you're not going to watch this show with this beautiful black family on this poster right now? You're going to tell me, I don't want to watch no coon shit. What, does that look coonish to you? I have Lawrence Fishburne, Tracy Ellis Ross, and myself and these beautiful babies on this poster. This beautiful black family. But you don't want to watch it, and you want to give me blowback because of a title, something that you can't even give me context to because you have no content to it, and you have never seen it. So I never understood why my own community, but yet, and I'm not shitting on these other shows that I'm about to mention, but yet, because there are some of my guilty pleasures too, but yet they want to watch real Atlanta Housewives and all that other shit, and Love and Hip Hop, and all that. And I remember a woman stood up and told me, she's like, I refuse to watch your show, because I showed her the pilot. I showed this group of pilot at Essence Festival before our show aired, and it just so happens that this one particular show airing, the room was full of everybody who said they would not watch the show because of its title. And I was like, do you watch Love and Hip Hop? Do you watch Real Housewives of Atlanta? Do you watch this? Do you watch that? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, is that a true depiction of who you are as a black woman? No, but you love that shit. And you don't even want to give my show a chance. Even looking at I keep referencing the poster because it was behind me when I was sitting up on the stage where there was a big, beautiful black poster of us. I was like, but you don't even want to give this a chance because of a title. How is blackish offensive to you? That's what I never understood. How is blackish offensive? And that goes into some other shit that we need a psychologist up here to talk about when we hear the word black in something as black people. What does that trigger in us? And why does it trigger? And why does it have an effect on us the way that it does? I don't understand that. But to answer your question, those were all of the blowbacks and a lot more that I got even before the show aired. But then you look at it, and then it's like, well, why wouldn't I want to watch this? Why wouldn't I want this to be a representation of who I am? We're socially conscious. We're not buffoons. We're successful. We dress well. We're articulate. We have beautiful babies who don't get in trouble other than the normal stuff that regular kids get involved in. Why wouldn't I want my family to sit up and watch this television show and support this, regardless if I was a part of it or not? If I were to see that, I'd be like, oh shit, yes, I got to watch this every week. This is must-see TV, not only for me, but for my family and for my friends, especially with what they're talking about. I'm going through those issues as a white man, as a Latino man, as a black man, as whomever. They're going through the same shit that I'm going through. I get that. I understand that. But what I don't understand is the criticism that we still continue to get to this day. But I see the bullshit on TV that you do watch, and I'm like, oh, okay, never mind. We're good.
That was a complete answer. Right here. Right here in the front.
Excuse my language for all you Christians in the building.
Yeah, this one's questions for Brandon. Dealing with mental health issues in the black community, like how can you approach those conversations? Because that's a hard conversation to actually start to have.
Yeah, it is tough. And it's funny because when I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder like 5-6 years ago, before I even went, I went to church that Sunday. Before I went to the McLean Hospital, I was in church, and it was like Easter Sunday or something. And we did this whole skit, and they had a panel of all these different characters. And they went through each character. Someone was, having marital issues. And then there was one single lady with 3 or 4 kids, and one troublemaker. And we went through all these issues, and there was a psychologist at the end. And this doctor was sitting there listening to their stories. So she listened to the stories, and then, long story short, at the end, she ended up like pulling out her hair, and it was like, Jesus is all you need. But that's not true, But in our community, that's what we think because we're so strong, we're built strong. And the same things that make us strong make us weak. Yeah. And we have to realize that sometimes you need more. God used people and places to help out us. And they're there they're right there at our disposal. And for me, I think it starts with the conversation. I said it earlier, where we're at in the mental health community today is where the HIV and cancer community was 25 years ago. So that's why I thought it was important for not only me to stand up and talk about these issues and say, look, this is what I struggled with, this is what I did to get to where I'm at today, and try to get my other friends to talk about their issues because it affects all of us. That's when we're going to see progress. But it starts with the conversation. That's the most important thing that we can do in this community. So hopefully that answers your question.
I really thought you was going to say you were in church and they had all those people up there, and you're like, damn, that's all of me. Didn't you think that's what he was gonna say? He was like, yeah. Didn't he? Like,
I hope y'all keeping score. We tied up. I'm gonna win. We tied up right now.
Gentlemen, this has been fantastic. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up, and so I will ask this final question of both of you. Specifically with kind of where you guys stand, what is your wish for 2017? Like, what are you hoping to have happen from the platforms that you stand on?
For me, it's, mental health is my thing. That's my purpose in life, to stand in the gap, help bridge it. 2017, my wife and I, she's here. I think she's behind the stage, but every year we pick a title for the year, and this year is the year of breakthrough. So I'm calling out over everyone in this room, just breakthrough. Whatever it is that you guys are wishing for, whatever it is that we're wishing for in our marriage and in our community, this is the year of breakthrough.
This is the year that I finally win that Emmy and Golden Globe. This was a personal wish. Go
for it. Go for it.
Right? Okay. No, this just goes back to love and acceptance, and I want everyone's dreams to come true. But in saying that, we all have to understand that we have to work towards that. We can't sit back and just wish and pray. You've got to put the work in, because you only get out of whatever it is that you put into it. And we will all have our window of we will all have that window of opportunity to be whatever it is that we want to be and become. But we have to be prepared for when that window of opportunity presents itself to us. We can't waste time getting ready, because we have no idea how long that window will be there for us. So you have to stay ready, and you have to work at that, and work at just being the best that you can be. So I just wish that for everybody in this room and everybody out there, to be the best that they can be, and then we'll win together that way.
Anthony Anderson, Brandon Marshall, this has been fantastic. How about another round of applause, please? Thank you.
Thank you guys for having us. Thank you.
What is borderline personality disorder? It's not a lot of personalities, but that's cool. It's funny.
Oh, okay. you just on the borderline of one of...
No, borderline personality disorder, it's an emotional disorder. So being able to regulate and control just common stresses, right? It could be a bad relationship, it could be a relationship, it could be, a financial issue, whatever. But being able to have the skills and tools to be able to cope with that. Prime example, and I'll close with this, we all are in this room, something happens, right? And it pisses us all off. Now, we all may be ticked off, but it may take someone longer to get back down the baseline who is suffering from borderline personality disorder. So I spent 3 months learning dialectical behavior therapy. That's to control those emotions. Cognitive behavior therapy, learning how to process what was going on, self-assessment and mentalization. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break while we set up for the next panel. Players in the media, black athletes, talking black athletes.
Thank you, sir.
All right, well, thank you.
Welcome. So we have sound. I'm really excited to introduce the next panel. I am Temple Northup. I am the director of the Valenti School of Communication here at the University of Houston, who along with African American Studies is co-sponsoring and producing this event. And so we really appreciate everyone who's here in the audience, everyone who's watching online. At the Valenti School, our mission is to train the next generation of innovative storytellers to be leaders in their fields. And so we take it seriously that to train leaders, we ourselves need to be leaders. And to be leaders, we need to hold important events like this about topics that are really important to today's culture. And so I'm really happy that we're able to do this and absolutely welcome you all here. I'm going to bring out our moderator for the next panel, Jason Reed, who's a senior writer at The Undefeated, and we're going to be looking at some athletes who turned into analysts and sort of talking about that transition and how they're able to do that. So please welcome Jason Reed.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. I want to just get right into this and just get these guys out here because these are three people who are great at what they do. They're great at what they did when they played football, and they're great at what they do now. So without any further ado, let me start with a guy who's arguably the greatest defensive player in the history of the USC football program. He's a three-time Super Bowl winner, and he's an outstanding analyst with the NFL Network, Mr. Willie McGinnis. The next guy is also a Super Bowl winner. He's also an outstanding analyst with ESPN. He's also a member of the greatest fraternity in the world, Kappa Alpha Psi. All right, brother, let me get that. All right. And he's a guy who is also a friend of mine. He's someone who I have a ton of respect for, Mr. Ryan Clark. Okay, and our last panelist, so not last, definitely not least, he's the guy who's coming up next, is, and I'm about to embarrass him, okay, so, just hang with me here for a second. Dominique Foxworth is one of the brightest guys I know, okay? These two guys are extreme, my man Dominique Foxworth, I work with him at The Undefeated. He was the former president of the NFL Players Association. He is a Renaissance cat. Give it up for my dude, Dominique Foxworth.
You left out good looking.
Well, good looking too. Okay, all right, fellas. What is it about being a black athlete, a former black athlete, well, you're not former black. You are, no, you're gonna stay black. What is it about being former NFL players who are also black? What type of advantage does that give you in dealing with African American athletes now, obviously in the NFL?
Wow, I never really looked at it like that. I think we're all brothers. When you're in the locker room, it's a fraternity, it's a family. You really don't look at color. I think you deal with guys according to their work ethic, their preparation, what they put into it, how dedicated they are, how do you relate, depending on your job description. I mean, there's a lot of other different things, but I don't think color really plays a part in the locker room. We're all brothers. We're all colorless, colorblind, and we're all in the same business, same whatever you may call it, for one common goal. So that's tough for me to answer.
Maybe that's why I didn't win any Super Bowls, because I didn't have the same experience. I think being on the team was awesome, and I think the amount of cooperation and the ideal kind of meritocracy where race and class doesn't matter. I think the sports locker room is the closest place to that, but it's still, for me at least, race is always a factor. It's never not an issue, and sometimes it works to your advantage, sometimes it works to your disadvantage, and we all carry different preconceived notions with us, and I think we see it often when it comes to drafting and scouting players, where there's a preconceived notion. I've never lined up against a white receiver that I thought could run past me, because that's just... No matter what it's for, I don't give a damn what that paper say. Not gonna run by me.
So Dom, you do look at it a little differently.
Yeah, I think I do, and I wish that I had the same experience that Willie had, or I saw the world in the same way, but that wasn't how I felt. And now that I'm on the other side with media, I think the recent years, the social issues that everyone's aware of, it's made it more difficult for us, and it's made it easier in some ways, and it's certainly more difficult because the expectations of things that I'm going to write about and expectations of things that I'm talking about, we have to educate ourselves on things broader than just the X's and O's, because those questions are going to be asked, and I'm not going home and looking my wife in the eye having kind of passed on a question about race or social issues, and same for my 3 children. They don't know what I'm talking about, but it's in my mind when that buzzing because I'm getting too political.
No, I think that's something out there that has nothing to do with us.
No, I think I can agree with both of with some of both of the statements. I think when it came to playing the game, I didn't necessarily think about the color. You know, it didn't matter to me that Brett Kiesel or Aaron Smith were white football players because they were my teammates. Like that doesn't matter. And it also doesn't matter as far as my relationships in life go. But when you do this job, it comes with a level of responsibility, a level of accountability. And, you know, we were joking earlier, you said, you know, you were like former black athletes,
right.
You know, but that's the thing. I will always be black.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an excuse to do certain things. It's not a crutch for certain things, but that is a fact, and that won't change. I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, and at 18, I have to, you know, tell my mother that I got this girl down the street pregnant, and she's white, you know. And when I was getting recruited, they were putting up LSU signs in their yard, and they were doing all these things. But when they found out that we had that type of relationship, now it was just the N-word down the street who wasn't going to take care of his kid.
Right.
You know, and so when those things happen, it's about perspective, and it's about your experiences. And so my experience as a black man does play into the way I see certain things. It doesn't play into the way I see football.
Well, okay, go ahead.
My parents were from Alabama, right? Birmingham and Mobile. So when you talk about the Martin Luther King, all the things that went on down in those areas, I can relate. I understand that. It all depends on where you grow up. I went to USC. So I went from the streets of Long Beach, California to USC, where right in the middle of South Central, but there's no South Central in those walls. And then I went to Boston. You know, I was drafted to Boston. So when you talk about racism and all those different things, of course they exist. You know, of course people go through them, but I wasn't one of those guys that carried all that into the work environment, because in my opinion, we're all the same. I never got into a race conversation, like an argument, or, you know, we never had those issues in our locker room. One, it started at the top. Our owner didn't go for that. You know, they did a lot of work in the inner cities and with the kids, and they brought everybody in. It was about your character. It's about what kind of man you were, what you believed in. Were you a family guy? Did you believe in giving back, your values and different things like that? So, you know, when I say experience, I'm not ignorant to the fact that it exists, and, you know, my family went through it. You know, a lot of people went through it, but is that something I carried on my back? I walked in with attitude, like saying, I know this is this, I'm looking for it, no, not at all. If something happened and presented itself, then I would handle it and address it. But other than that, in here, like where we was, in our locker room, I didn't care if you was green. If you treated me like a man and you respected me and I respected you, and we talked to each other with respect, and we was there to do our jobs, then we're all equal, in my opinion.
And I totally feel you on that. I see what you're saying, and it all comes down to experience, background, frame of reference, how you're treated by people. I'm curious, so, like, none of you, all you guys are retired now, obviously. The level of activism that we have right now, especially the level of activism this past year in the NFL, how do you think that might have affected you guys in the locker room? Because this is something that over the course of this year, and you and I have talked about this a lot, that there were issues. I mean, there were issues on teams. I mean, Ryan, you want to start on that?
You know, I live in Baton Rouge, and obviously, you know, we had some, you know, we had issues of, you know, young black men dying by the hands of police. We also had policemen die. I mean, you and I spoke about it, and you put out a piece after talking to me,
which got a lot of reaction around the country.
Right, and you know, and for me, you know, I was on the side that Black Lives Matter, and I think what the perception of it was negative because people didn't realize we were just saying Black Lives Matter as well. Black Lives Matter too. Not they matter only, you know, because I told you as soon as the policemen were were killed, I called one of my friends who is one of the head of the police. He's the PR director. He had to speak right after those policemen passed, and I'm checking on him. Hey man, are you all right? Are those any of your friends? One of the policemen went to my church. There was a memorial. So I understood, you know, all the things, but I think we have a responsibility, but we don't have an obligation, right? So because Colin Kaepernick does what he does, it doesn't cast a bad light on every other black athlete that doesn't, right? Because they don't have to do that. That's not their obligation. Their job is to play football. But I do think, you know, for me, like I wore a Colin Kaepernick jersey on TV.
I know you did. I saw
right?
it.
And so, and legit, this is what happened. So I'm on TV, right? I'm on TV. I walk to the side.
There's a demonstration phase of the.
I cut my mic off. I take my mic off. I grab my phone and it rings. Ryan, you can't do that, right? That's not. And so when you get that call and they talk to you, you're okay with it because I cleared it with my wife. I said, babe, I'm gonna do this. I told my children, babies, I'm gonna do this. And so when daddy does it, you have to be okay with it. Are you okay? They was like, yeah, Dad, I'm fine. I believe in you, whatever. And so now when they call me, he was like, they called me back like, okay, so I just want you to know, don't worry about it. I was like, I'm not. Right. You know, because
you had made peace with that before you went there.
But because for me, it's not about what people think about me. It's about what I think about myself. And I wasn't okay with young black men dying and nobody caring. And so I wanted to make sure that people knew that. So if I was in the locker room at that time, you know, I wasn't in the locker room like, really, well, we don't have those conversations. Because I've had a ton of those conversations. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't because the organization didn't bring people in or didn't allow people to get in the community. It's just because we are all different and we see things different ways.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I've always kind of thought of myself as somewhat progressive and.
Your mic.
I know I ain't win no Super Bowl, so they don't got no respect.
Hey, but you see though, they hand you Willie mic. It got that 3.
I know that's nice.
That
It echoes a bit. It's got that Pro Bowl sound to it. Must be nice. I like this. I know, yeah.
Dominique Foxworth, ladies and gentlemen. Dominique Foxworth.
I was just gonna say that I there was nothing going on like what Kaepernick was doing, and I think about myself as someone who be outspoken and like those sorts of things. But I'm not sure what I would have done. Like I like to think that I would have been, whether I was on his team or not. I like to think that I would have engaged in it also. No, you ain't got no Pro Bowls neither.
Hello. I think I know what you would have done.
But I mean, and it's not that it's right or wrong. It's just that I would like to think that I would be a part of it and I wouldn't have. I like to use, while you have this platform, you try to use it for good.
The other thing is too though, like, I'm sorry. It's what Foxworth and what Ryan Clark it was. Like, first through fourth year Ryan Clark wouldn't have did it.
You gotta get that second contract.
I'm trying to make a team. You know, later on in my career, I think I would have felt better about making that type of statement. So, you know, that's why I think for me it was really encouraging to see people stand up like that.
The only issue I had with it is I grew up in Long Beach, California. I was there when the riots happened with Rodney King. I was at USC, right in the middle of South Central. The whole city was on lockdown. They brought in the National Guard. The police had been killing young black men in the neighborhoods where I grew up at for years. I've been seeing it. You get jacked over, you get pulled over, whatever the case may be. When the Bloods and Crips got together during the riots and all that, police started dying. An initiative changed. A fax was sent to the police headquarters to say for every day that those police officers are not arraigned, an officer will get shot. And it started happening. So, I mean, I've been through all those different type of situations. And the only problem I have with Colin Kaepernick is he's been in the league for a while. He's had the platform for a while. And there were a lot of things happening in neighborhoods or rallies or whatever. I didn't see him show up to not one of them. Okay? So if you're that passionate in the off season or these families or whatever's going on, there was some backstory to this whole Kaepernick thing when he started to get all Angela Davis on us, you know, and passionate about the word and what's going on in the inner cities. But my thing is, you got the platform, you got everybody's attention. It was time to vote. You didn't go vote.
Well,
That's one. That's just one thing. If you want change, you got to go vote. And there's more issues on the ballot than just who the president or vice president or whatever it is. It was about how much, it was things about the death penalty. There's a whole bunch of things that affected our people on that ballot. Okay? And then don't keep telling me what you're going to do. Like, I'm the type of guy, if I know you're down for a cause and you're for real and you want me to get behind you, I need to make sure you're really behind it. Because when I go, I'm going to go 1,000%. And it's till the wheels fall off. But if you're not real about it, then I'm going to put myself out there for something you're not really real about that I'm not sure. And I'm not saying he's not. I'm still waiting to see what steps he's going to take. Because he started a lot of conversation. And he had a lot of people involved with the movement. But I just want to know what your movement is. Because I've been through it and I lost brothers to it. I lost family members to it. So it's real to me. So I can't sit up and watch something happen on a major stage, the biggest stage in the world. This wasn't just sports news, right? This is world news that everybody was talking about it. Then I just want to see something happen. I just want to see it go further in a positive way.
Right. Well, as to your point about him voting, I talked to a lot of people about this, and a lot of people had a problem with that. Because if you want to affect positive social change, one way you go about that, and many people would argue the best way you go about that, is by getting off your butt and go and vote. So I understand what you're saying about that. I think there are some people who felt that, well, he put his money where his mouth is because he gave $1 million to
Not yet.
Well,
he said he was.
He pledged to.
Not yet.
Right.
I'm going to give $10 million.
Okay.
I ain't got it.
No, I'm just saying. I ain't.
No, I ain't got it. I can put something on it.
You can say, but that's my whole point.
You want to just jump in? Just go.
That's my point. You can say it, but go ahead.
I mean, I
Fox.
guess we don't want to get bogged down on this particular issue,
Right.
but I obviously respect Willie, and there's some of the things in there that I disagree with. Is like what Colin did. So it's me. It's not the microphone. It's me. What Colin did was significant to me, not because I'm waiting to see him carry it on, was because it did become a national story, and it did become so. While he may not be in the community on a daily basis, I feel like whatever impact that he could have at a rally or in a high school is much smaller than the impact that he had for kneeling for one game. Because that was something that was pushed into the public zeitgeist that wasn't there before. Kids who are watching were having these conversations, and often people, it's not something that you said, but in general, the criticism of him is like, you started a conversation, but what is that? But I think that's how change happens. That's how change happens. Change is a slow bending arc, and the idea that Kaepernick was gonna take a knee, then walk out and fix the world is different. The idea that he took a knee, and they're 10-year-olds now who were not thinking about police brutality, who were not thinking about Black Lives Matter. They're now aware of it, and 15 years, 20 years from now, those people will be somewhat guided and changed. So I mean, and the thing about voting, again, I'll let you take over.
I had a good point, but what you said is right. It opened up the eyes to the people who wasn't affected by it. I had a lot of people that live on the outskirts of LA, in the really nice neighborhoods, that never go down in those neighborhoods, who really can't really understand or relate to what we're talking about or what our friends and family go through. So for those people, it did open up their eyes, because they didn't even know it existed, because they're never down there. But for us, it's been going on since we was yay high. You know what I mean? And when I say like he opened up the conversation, I thought it was great. But I just want to see you pursue and go ahead and finish it.
Well, I don't mean, because I know Dominic said he doesn't want to stay here. I think the huge thing for me is when you look at Colin's decision to kneel, I think a lot of what happens after that is that people now want to watch to dispute. People don't want to watch to support, right? It's like arguing with my wife. She doesn't listen to learn, right? She listens to dispute, right? So when Colin kneels, right, the people on the outside say, okay, yeah, he knelt, but let's see what he's going to do now. And I mean, and if you watch him, he's had the Know Your Rights movements. He's given to schools and he's done other things. But I agree with Dominic. When he knelt, I didn't think to myself, okay, now I need to go watch Colin Kaepernick save the
Who
world.
cares what he does?
Right?
Like when he knelt, he gave us all an opportunity to pick up the baton.
But what he
And
did do is give me an opportunity to talk about it.
Absolutely,
Right? He
absolutely,
gave me an opportunity to talk about Alton Sterling, who died 15 minutes from my house. And so I think that those things are important. And what we have to remember is like preachers, right? Like when you go to church, they used to always tell me, don't fall in love with the messenger, listen to the message. Right? Because Colin did that, we can't expect him to now be perfect. We can't expect him to do everything we think comes along with that. And it's our charge to first not just agree with everything he does because he's black, because I'm not going to do that, right? But because he is, and because he decided to take a stand that I actually agree with, it is my opportunity to support him in that.
All three of y'all made great points, and we could stay on this for like 12 hours, but we don't have that much time. So,
Because you got us out here late, Jay.
wait, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. All right, let me pivot for a second, but not completely pivot. I want to talk a little bit about social media. We've done a little bit about that, but we can look at this Kaepernick stand and the movement that he ignited, and we saw what happened on social media. We're still seeing what happened on social media. What do you guys think about just the reaction on social media about things that you may say or do? I mean, Ryan, I want to start with you on this because you referenced that piece that you and I did, and it blew up on Twitter and it was moving everywhere and people were talking about it. But one of the things that struck me was I was looking at your timeline one day, and there were some people who were not very happy about what you said. Talk about just dealing with the blowback from social media.
But that's part of it, right? That's part of the access you give people to your thoughts, and because you give them access to your thoughts, they can now reply or they can now tell you what they think about it. And I can be honest, like as long as like people don't get, like real disrespectful and like cuss, I'll answer any question. Like if you want to have an actual intelligent conversation about something you disagree
So you will
with me,
engage people.
yeah,
Right?
because I think that's what it is, right? You want that conversation. And there's sometimes if you tweet something or if you say something, you never really get it all out. Like in a 140 character tweet, I can't thoroughly explain my thought process. But when Dominique tells me you're stupid and I feel this way, it now gives me an opportunity in addressing him to address the rest of the people that follow me or who may see it, that allows me to clarify some of the things I said.
Willie?
I mean, I'm a little older, right? So I'm 45, and I'm a little older than these guys. So, no, it's different because, like, when you talk about social media and all the platforms that they have now, in the 90s, in the early 2000s, it didn't exist. And sometimes I look at these young kids like they're so caught up on likes. Somebody doesn't like your picture. Somebody doesn't follow you. If you unfollow somebody. In the entertainment world, these rappers and everybody are falling out because they didn't repost something. I can't get with it. I understand it, but I just
gotta retweet it, man.
If you don't retweet it, you're in trouble. You know what I mean?
Retweet it and let me know it's real.
Let me know it's real. Let me know we was really in the studio together, or we were really up here on the panel talking. You know, if these guys tweet something out and I don't hit retweet, I'm in trouble. Yeah, we done. So I do understand it. I do respect it. And what I understand is these younger kids and the younger generation are growing up in this. I can't say, when it was my day, like sound like an old parent, right? When we was young, we used to walk 50 miles to school. No, you didn't. You know what I mean? So now it's different, and I think it's a powerful tool. I think it's important because kids are not outside playing sports like they used to back in the day. The TVs are getting shut off. You can watch television, everything you need from your iPad or your phone, and we spend more times on our phone than any other source. So I respect it and I understand it, and I also understand when I get on there and tweet. I'm not a big social media dude, but we have to do it for work and other things. I don't like to expose my family to it. I do expose myself because I'm under the light, under the microscope. But I do also understand that you open up yourself to a lot of different criticisms when you comment about certain things, whether it's politics, whether about it's certain issues that's going on in the world. You have to be very, very careful. And a lot of times people get emotional and they get real passionate about something. The first thing they do is they grab the phone and they start
Big
going.
mistake.
And that's the big mistake.
Act like LeBron.
No.
Uh-oh.
Young people act like LeBron.
No, but it's not
right?
just young people.
Come on, Ryan.
It's not just young people, right? It's everybody. Grown adults get on there. I mean, you got guys in their 70s tweeting and saying certain things. So it doesn't matter who's on it. But what I'm saying is, it's positive, but it can also be very, very negative. You have to be careful.
They said it all.
Really?
Yeah, I ain't got nothing else to say. I can't repeat what they said.
Well, you know what? On the next one. Okay, all right.
I'm gonna crush this one. Give it to me.
Okay. Actually, this is good for you because, as I started out by saying, Dom was the president of the Players Association. And obviously in that role, you deal with a lot of stuff about players. And I'm curious, Dom, do you have a problem with how the media in general sometimes portrays black athletes? From the standpoint, and I remember when the Ray Rice situation happened, and you had a lot of people coming out saying a lot of things, and are you...
Before or after the video?
Well, both.
Because that's a major difference.
No question, but on both ends of it. Right. There was, right, there's nothing you can do. But in general, when there are issues, hot button issues, do you feel that the media in general does a good job covering African American athletes?
I'm not sure if I can say whether it's a good or bad job overall, but I mean, there's certainly people that are doing it well. But I think by and large, it's hard to shake our preconceived notions. So like, we all have them. And like I said before at the beginning, like I was half joking about like, I have assumptions about white receivers, and we all have assumptions from growing up in this culture. We have assumptions, whether we want to admit it or not, about black men. And on the occasion when black men fall into those stereotypes and fit those assumptions, I think the media is quick to stick to those kind of old tropes and sell in that way because people are comfortable that way. I think it's a lot more difficult to go outside of that and to try to approach things differently, no matter who the race is. So I think it's not a problem that the media has. I think it's just a problem in human nature. Is one that we are like instinctively
just inherited biases that we have.
Yeah, we have these biases, and I think that we should be aware that those biases exist in ourselves, and also be aware that those biases exist in the people that are distributing our media. I'm new to the journalism world, and I work with you and a bunch of other accomplished journalists, and all the journalists that I talk to want to present themselves as unbiased, which I don't know, I don't tell them this because I feel like they would get angry.
Nah, you need to tell them, yeah.
But you're not. Like, you're a human. It's impossible to be unbiased. It's impossible for your life as a black male, or your life as a white female, or your life as a transgender person. It's impossible for that not to color your opinions and to influence your writing. So, I don't know, we should stop pretending that we're unbiased, and people should understand when you're reading it or you're watching it that biases do exist.
Right, and before Ryan speaks, what the media should try to do is be fair, because we're all going to come to it with a subjective outlook. But go ahead.
Well, I think. Oh, gosh, Willie's mic is fire.
Hot mic.
But like I think Dominique, he said a lot of what I was thinking. But I remember years ago, Mark Cuban took a lot of flack because he made a statement that if he was walking down the street and it's late at night and a black guy in the hood was walking, he'd cross to the other side. Then he said, if I cross over there and it's a white dude, bald head with tattoos all over, I'd go to the other side. And people were more upset because of the Trayvon Martin what they felt like description, right? A black guy in the hood. Right, and I remember talking about it. I said, that doesn't make him racist. That just makes him aware, right? Because we do all have preconceived notions, or we do have biases because of the things we've seen, because of the things we've experienced. And those things play a part in how we see the world. And it's the same way if I'm writing, if I'm talking about something, my personal feelings play a part in it in some way. And I think, you know, you do your best as being a part of the media to cover everyone fair. It's easier when it comes to actually playing ball, right? Like I'm with Willie. Like, you can be purple, film don't lie. Like, if you got burnt up, you just got burnt. Whether you white, black, like you stink. You know what I mean? And so you can say those things. I think it gets harder when we get into the social issues, when we get into topics of race, because now our personal opinions play a part in that, our personal experiences.
But I will say about the film don't lie is a true thing, but I think that we do see in the coverage of athletes, especially at the quarterback position, there are assumptions made, and especially when it comes to coaches, there are assumptions made by many people within the media that hurt a guy's long-term.
No question.
Yeah, so like
if you're a white receiver, you are Wes Welker forever. You can't be nobody else.
But I mean, in the same,
that's your comparison.
The same limitations exist for black quarterbacks. Whereas there's a white quarterback who gets drafted early, he'll get a bunch of chances. If he flops here, someone else will see something in him and give him another chance.
Or like in the situation with Cam when he was coming out, he was being compared to Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah,
so why is it that all white quarterbacks aren't compared to Ryan Leaf?
Yeah.
You know, I mean that's what you're talking about.
Cam is nothing. He doesn't play anything like Jamarcus Russell.
Right,
You wrote a piece about Raheem Morris recently that kind of speaks to that.
Well, I mean, I think that's true both ways, though. It's true. You know, we have to, when a black quarterback comes into the draft, it's always about his athleticism.
Right.
Right. We never speak of, you know, Russell Wilson maybe changing that, but he's found ways to make himself highly acceptable. Right? Like he, you know, and I spoke about this with Cam when it was talking about the race issue, and I felt like race was involved, but it was more about the culture he embraces.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, and think about it, and if you're a white pass rusher, what you got? You got a relentless motor. Right? You know what I'm saying? This guy always gives 100%.
Try hard guy.
Right, but we never say, man, you know, and it took J.J. Watt. I was like, man, this freaking dude's really athletic.
But the problem there is implicit in the description of the white players is virtue. Like, he has effort, he works really hard, he cares a lot.
It's getting real now, y'all.
Implicit in the explanations of black athletes is they are gifted, athletic. Like, it has nothing to do with their hard work. Yeah, it has nothing to do with their knowledge of the game. It has nothing to do
just their
with
intellect, period.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with commitment. It's like, he woke up this way. He is descendant of big burly slaves, and he can do this. Whereas the white guy's like, he's super smart, and it's so great that he worked so hard. He had to work so hard so that he can compete with these animals. And that
this right here was what I was waiting on. I knew it was coming because I know him, so I knew it was coming eventually. This is what I was waiting on.
You're gonna get me fired.
No, I ain't gonna get you. No.
I work for Disney, man. The mouse ain't down with this Negro talk.
What you're talking about, because what you and Ryan just were talking about is the truth. Okay, I want to get to Willie real quick, and then I want to open up for some questions, but we don't have a ton of time left. So Willie, is there anything you want to say?
I don't need this job.
No, but you know those conceptions are there, and they've always been there since, you know, Warren Moon and some of the other quarterbacks, you know, who won championships and changed people's ideals of how a quarterback's supposed to be. I think what's good now is, you mentioned Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, outside of his post-game episodes that he has on the podium, has revolutionized the position. So now everybody wants one, right? The pocket quarterback is still great if you could play at a high level, but the game has changed. The athlete has changed. So now you get a pass rusher like a J.J. Watt, who's a 3-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. And they compare him to Lawrence Taylor, the greatest they say probably the greatest football player ever. They're starting to put his numbers up against his. And when I look at JJ, I don't look at white or black. I look at, this is a hell of a dude that's out there playing his ass off, you know? But for us, we've been fighting it forever. The other thing is they didn't really hit on, like, well, they did mention on is, you know, when you get us out of our uniform and you have a conversation and you're in an executive meeting, you can turn to executive and have a real meeting. Yeah. Like, wow, this guy is smart. Well, I mean, what did you, not all of us just were what he was talking about. And that's what I had an issue with.
And you're also articulate and
right.
well-spoken.
Well, okay. Wow. And I'm surprised.
Okay.
I'm like,
hate that.
Right? I'm not going to get you started,
walking
Fox.
through the hotel.
I see you going.
You're so well-spoken, as opposed to what?
Listen, I want to open up the questions, but I just want to close on this because I covered Ryan in his last year in the NFL, and one of the things that I got into an argument one time with some media members is because they were talking about like how articulate Ryan was, and I never told you about this, but someone mentioned to me just about, oh, you know, he's so, you know, well-spoken on so many topics, and this person, I don't know what's inside this person's heart, but I had to check the person. I was like, well, wait a minute, why wouldn't he be? You know, so I think what you all three just talked about is real, and it's something that, you know, as you transition into what you've done, I'm sure you've blown people away with, oh wow, you know, I mean, these guys are really, but no, it's not like you three, the only three like that. There are a lot of us like that out there. I mean, but the perception is that it doesn't exist.
But we have to keep it real.
Right.
There are some guys that grab the
No
microphone that should not have grabbed the microphone.
Right.
And when you hear them talk,
I love those interviews,
you know that, right?
I love it.
I'm just saying.
No, you got to
Just
keep it
being
real.
honest
No, you got
with
to
you.
keep it
If
real.
you're gonna grab the mic,
absolutely.
If you're gonna grab the mic, make sure you handed it to the right person.
Well, I think
because we give some bad examples too.
Yeah, but who you are, who you are is what you are going to be. And I think in a lot of these situations, especially when you look at football and basketball, there are so many black players. There are so many African American players, and you got to understand where some of these kids come from. Some of the history plays into it, right? The neighborhoods you in, the public schools you have to go to, they're not pumping money into these schools. They're not the best teachers. So you aren't necessarily learning these things, and you are an athlete, right? You sometimes you are stereotypical. Like, I'm not, right? My parents been married for 36 years. I went to Catholic school. If I got a C, I couldn't go to the dance. Like, that was the way I was raised. Everybody's not raised that way. And so you're going to have some of those examples. I think my issue isn't that. My issue is the deeper issues, I think, what Dominique was saying, and not just about the players, it's about the people, right? When we do certain things, it seems like those things, like the negative, is expected of us. And when we do things that are positive, now we're the exception.
Right.
And we have to change that perception.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well said, well said. All right, listen, I'm going to just put this on the table real quick here. We do not have a lot of time. I know that everyone would love to ask a ton of questions, but I'll just ask you to keep your question brief to the point so we can get as many in as possible, okay?
So like you said, after y'all take off y'all pads and everything, now y'all in suits. So it's like, do y'all feel like as being black men, y'all window is smaller to miss up after like, so?
I guess, I mean, there are opportunities, to be honest with you, there are opportunities that being an athlete opens up, and while the expectations for us are low, like that unfortunately works to my advantage in certain issues, because people are like, oh, I didn't expect that. You can read too. It's like, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it's to that point. The difficult thing is many of the guys who are not that articulate, and I think we have an issue just generally society-wide in evaluating people's intelligence or equating intelligence and knowledge as the same thing. So like, just because you don't know, like I went to public school in Baltimore County.
He also went to Harvard.
I went to public school in Baltimore County, and so when I did go to business school at Harvard, there were conversations that I was in where they were, my classmates were referencing Aristotle's Poetics,
and referencing things that just weren't like, that's not what we read. I didn't know anything about it. And I'm in those conversations, and the assumption could be made that I'm not very smart because I'm not aware of those things. When that's why, I mean, there's a difference between knowledge and intelligence. I can read poetics and understand it as well or better and find things in it that you haven't, but I wasn't exposed to it. So the same thing happens when guys, and it happens often with athletes on TV, they may not use the proper verb. And then the assumption is he's dumb. Like, no, he's not dumb, he's smart. It's the same way as you take some kid who speaks another language and you drop him in an American college, that kid may not do well because of the language barrier, but it doesn't mean that they're not smart. So I urge you guys to see that there's always a difference between intelligence and knowledge. Just because you don't know things doesn't mean that you're not smart.
We're going to can we get one or two more questions in? Just one more question, okay.
Hi, I wanted to say first, it's very, very inspiring to see all of you up here today. And I know we both come from very different backgrounds, but a lot of what you said actually I related to very well in this panel and also the first panel. And so I think the community that I come from, the Muslim community, is still like 10, 15 years behind the Black community and at least starting a conversation. And so I'd like to be one of those people who do that in the future. And so my question to you guys is, you guys are all family men, and how much do you engage your families in your work as activists?
My wife, and I talk about her all the time because we've been together forever. My wife is really involved, especially in the community service and the activism part, both vocally on social media and with her works. I think that side of who you are is your life. Right, we just played football. Like, I wasn't, like, football was what I did. It wasn't who I was. The rest of the stuff, and Willie and Dominique can tell you, like, the rest of the stuff is what lasts. The rest of the stuff is what matters to you. So my family is really involved in everything. My kids are involved. My wife is involved. Because in the end, we've been blessed to serve. Right? Like, we have all these amazing opportunities. There are doors that are open to me because I was a football player that wouldn't normally be open to me. And honestly, sometimes I'm not qualified to have those doors opened. And so my job is, and what I've been tasked to do, is build up our community in those ways as well. But I think it's good for young Black men. I think it's good for young Black women to see a family of Black people understand that what they've received, what they've gotten is all by the grace of God, and it's also our chance to give back to them. So when, I moved back to Baton Rouge, so cats in Baton Rouge could be like, Ryan Clark's from Louisiana. Ryan Clark married his high school sweetheart. They had kids, and this is where they are now. I want them to see that. I want them to touch that. I want them to feel that, so they know, man, we can all be something. Doesn't have to be a football player, but we can all be successful.
Pretty much. Where's the great mic? Hello? Can you guys hear me? Well, he pretty much summed it all. I think one of the things that is real important to me is what he said, going back. It's important for our young kids and youth and high school kids who are caught up in so many things, able to see somebody successful in whatever it is, business, somebody that had an opportunity to go to college and learn, get their education, find out what their way is in life, what they wanted to do, and they came back and shared their stories. It's not always giving back with money or going back and showing off of how great life is, but just going back and having a conversation. You can change a lot of lives. And our kids, my kids, I'm sure their kids, we try to put them back in that atmosphere so they understand that it hasn't always been this easy. You got to work and you got to earn. And you got to educate yourself to get to a point where you can put yourself in position to get a chance. And there are some kids, there's some family members that, my nephew, he thinks he was around when we went to our first Super Bowl. He was 2 years old. So he's seen the greatest quarterbacks and played against the greatest teams and been the AFC champion. He's been around some of the greatest players ever. Now he's in high school football. And his drive isn't the same because maybe he thought it was just supposed to happen because he's seen it happen over and over and over again. But what I tell him is, it's the hardest thing in the world to do. And you're not good enough to just show up and do it. It takes a lot of hard work, dedication, sacrifice, and commitment. And it also takes education to help you along to get you to where you need to be. Because this right here, these guys sitting up here, this is a success story. Getting out of your neighborhood, where you come from, being able to avoid all the extracurricular things that go on. We see young men getting killed all the time, not just by police, but by each other. And there's a lot going on that we have to avoid in our communities and where we grow up at. So every guy that make it out, regardless of what you're doing, sports or not, and you're doing something good for yourself, then that's a success story to me. And I like to bring those guys around and have those conversations.
Listen, obviously, I think we went a little bit over, but I want to thank these brothers for coming and doing this. I have immense respect for them. Please give them a hand. And thank you guys. We really appreciate this, and we had a great time. Thank you very much.
I want to go ahead and thank this panelist, this panel, Jason Reed, Ryan Clark, Dominique Foxworth, Willie McGinnis. We want to thank the last panel, Kelly Carter, Anthony Anderson, Brandon Marshall. And of course, we want to thank Kevin Merida and the whole team at The Undefeated. We want to thank University of Houston and the Valenti School of Communications, of course, African American Studies, and of course, you all. I'm Dr. Drew Brown. I want to thank you all for coming and making this a great event.